Time for another walk around, this time the Aprilia RXV. I've had this bike for a couple years now. It's a pretty interesting enduro. Bought this thing kind of on a whim, actually. I saw it come up available on Craigslist, and I had just kind of gotten really interested in Aprilia. I just bought my RSVR, and that really surprised me quite a lot as to Aprilia's sort of secret sauce, I guess you could say. So I said, all right, let's see what else they make that I might want to look at. And I'm like, wait a minute, they make a dirt bike? Yes, they do. At least they used to. Unfortunately, they do not make this thing anymore. There's also a supermoto version of this called the SXV, which is basically the same bike with bigger brakes and supermoto wheels and a little bit different suspension belting here and there. But it is quite unique as dirt bikes go. The most unique bit of it is the engine, which, unlike pretty much every dirt bike or supermoto you've seen or heard about, this is not a thumper. This is a V-twin. You can see there is one bank there and another one there. So it's a very small V-twin. You can think of it as like two 250 size thumpers stuck together on a common crankcase, which is essentially what it is. There's a bit more to it, but it is really unique in its power delivery and its power among pretty much any other dirt bike I've ever ridden anyway. Probably most significantly, it just makes a crap load of power. I mean, 70, 80 horsepower, give or take, which in a dirt bike this light is pretty ridiculous. To put that in perspective, it makes probably 10 to 15 more horsepower than my CR500, and it weighs less. So this bike, if you crank it up, is really a handful. In most situations off-road, you're just barely teasing the throttle. You're using very little of the power band. But on the street, you know, transiting, it really has all the power in the world compared to pretty much any other dirt bike. Unless you get into like, I think the Husqvarna 701 is pretty comparable. But again, that's a 700cc bike versus this thing, which is not quite half the displacement, but close to it. And they make about the same power. So you get a lot of interesting things with the V-twin that you don't get on thumpers. One is the smoothness and the general lack of vibration. It really doesn't vibrate very much, certainly compared to a thumper. Another is it's got a really interesting power band. It's not just like a conventional torquey four-stroke thumper. It actually behaves more like a two-stroke in that at low RPMs it's fairly torquey, but also not particularly difficult to control. Then once you get above 5,000–6,000 RPM, it gets really silly. It's almost like it gets on pipe, but obviously it's not. Quite like the frame on it. It's this big Horkin chunk of cast aluminum that everything is kind of bolted onto. Looks pretty neat, pretty unique. Same deal with the swing arm. It's all handmade, TIG welded aluminum. I don't know if you can see the welds there, but it is quite a nice piece. Some really neat styling cues I like are the exhaust. It's a dual, well, it's technically a dual exhaust. It goes into a common can, but twin tips. And they just kind of live here on the side of the fender. I really like how that looks, and I like the clearance. I mean, I've never hung that up. As you can see there, it's pretty hard to catch that on anything. And this bike I've put down a lot. So if there was anything you could possibly rip off of it, I certainly would have by now. Got the Aprilia Lion here on the plastics. They got rid of these after the first couple years. This is actually a first-year bike. This is an 07. I greatly prefer them. Obviously, there's the whole Loco thing, but I think it looks cool. You know, it adds a little zing to the bike. Makes it a little bit more noteworthy. Same deal with the RSVR factory. I really like those graphics, whereas the other RSVRs perhaps don't look as good, at least in my opinion. One of the things I do not like about the RXV is the seat. It is very, very slick and very easy to slide off of. So if you're thinking about doing a wheelie or just, you know, trying to keep the bike between your legs while climbing, you know, good luck. I will probably recover this at some point just to make my life a little bit less ridiculous with some kind of Alcantara stuff. One thing that's notable about the RXV is it actually was designed to be used on the street. As you can see, it's got a big old cooling fan there on the radiator, which most other enduro bikes do not have. You have to kind of add that, like my WR, for example, does not have one, and that makes it somewhat annoying occasionally in traffic. Another thing that is not wonderful with the RXV is the electrics. When I bought this bike, everything behind the headlight cover here was all covered up in a Ziploc bag and taped together. I'm like, well, why would you do that? So I took all that off, and the first time I got the bike wet, I found out why you would do that. You get any moisture in here, it's going to get really unhappy. The connectors that Aprilia used are just not very good, frankly, and not sealed very well. So at some point, I'm going to convert all those over to Deutsch and Motorsport connectors, so then it will truly be an all-weather bike, which is a good thing. When I think I've probably gotten this thing soaked more than any other bike as well. Case in point, behind that little flap there is the fuse box, and as you can see, it's actually quite low on the bike. The battery is only slightly above that, below the seat. So if you get water up, you know, halfway up the frame, and the rear wheel's throwing it up in there, it can have interesting electrical issues, and I've had most of them. I've also had most of the coolant hoses fail at some point or other. As you can see, I've replaced them all with these silicone HPS hoses, and that solved that problem, but the stock hoses are just junk. One other interesting kind of side effect, I guess you could say, is that the starter on the bike, there's only electric start, there's no kick start. So if the e-start doesn't work, you're pretty much up a creek. And the wiring harness and solenoids, and in fact the battery, is occasionally not up to the task of cranking the bike very well, especially when it's hot. So it can be interesting to get it going from time to time. Case in point, it does that crap. You can see I'm pretty much stalling the starter against the compression of the engine. That is not an uncommon thing for this bike. It's just the starter works fine. It's got enough torque to crank the engine over. It's just the wiring harness, and this has actually already been upgraded once. Just does not quite have the juice to crank it over properly, and that's fixable. But if you're thinking about buying one of these things, that would be my #1 thing to suggest you do. It does have quite a unique sound, as dirt bikes go, owing to the V-twin. It does not sound like any thumper you've ever heard. Personally, I quite like that. Fairly rudimentary dash. It does have various modes, like this is the odometer, that's the trip, time, RPM. There is a good bit of lag in it, unfortunately, but it does okay. Yeah, and the indicators work well enough. Your shift light is here. It's kind of a silly thing, but you know, it does the job. It's better than a trail tech anyway. A couple of the mods I've done to the bike. First off, I changed all of the lights out for LEDs. That's just take a little bit of stress off of the electrical system. Plus they're massively brighter. I mean, this bike, you really couldn't see it coming with the stock halogen in there, but with the LED you really can. It is not subtle. That's actually just the little marker light. The main beam does not come on unless it's running. Other than that, the suspension is quite good. I've put fork seals in it a couple times because, well, it's a dirt bike. You're going to jump it and do stuff that's going to make the seals unhappy. So, but these are quite easy to work with. The Marzocchi forks, they're actually a little bit easier to deal with than like Olin's or Showas. So they're pretty simple to rebuild. You don't really need any special tools or anything of that nature. I mean, a slide, a seal driver helps, but isn't strictly necessary. Rear shock is Olin's. Works quite well. One thing some people bitch about is these turn signals. They say they're pretty easy to break. I don't know what people have been doing with them because I've laid this bike down dozens of times and never broken one. So I kind of like them. They're LED from the factory, which is somewhat rare. And you can see them and they work and they don't break off, at least for me. So I like them quite a bit. Tail light too is LED and pretty neat looking. Wouldn't want to do too many wheelies on this thing because grinding that off, I mean, that's going to suck and it's also going to be hard to find a new one. I've had a few people ask where I get these mirrors from. I've got one on each side. I have these same mirrors on my WR Supermoto. They're just blind spot mirrors. You can get, I think I got these on Amazon. You can probably also get them at just about any auto parts store. And you just drill a hole through them and put them onto the zip tie. They are mirrors. It is legal. You can't really see a whole hell of a lot, but it's a lot nicer than having some big stupid thing that's going to snap off. Some of the little stuff I really like on this bike, like the crash pan there. Actually, it's this really nice welded, handmade aluminum piece, and it's pretty beefy. It's like, you know, probably 3/16 thick aluminum, and that'll really save your engine quite a bit. A lot better than like the plastic things that come on most of the Japanese bikes. So I quite like that. Really, overall, the kind of handmade feel of the bike is one of the things I really enjoy. Also, as I mentioned, you know, unlike the WR and like the CRFX, these bikes actually are designed to be used in the street. They are legal from the factory. As such, you have everything like right down to the little brake switches on both front and rear brakes. You know, all the lights are from the factory. You really don't have to do anything to register it for the street, which is nice. So yeah, that is the Aprilia RXV. Probably my favorite enduro bike. It's certainly got its issues, largely to do with the electrical and starting system, but mechanically it is built very well. It's very strong. Nothing is ever broken or cracked, and it's unique. It's interesting. You know, if you go riding with some friends who are into enduro or just, you know, into dual sports, you're very unlikely to see another one of these. You're going to see a million KTMs and a million Yamaha WRs and whatnot, but you're unlikely to see another one of these unless you ride with some fairly interesting people. So this is the Aprilia RXV, and I had a couple people ask for this video. Sorry it took so long to get this out to you, but you know, life happens. So if there's anything else you'd like to see that I have, if you'd like another walk around video, just leave it in the comments and I'll do it as soon as I can.
Hey, did you like this video? Well, hit the like button. Leave me a comment if you want to, and if you want to see more videos like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the channel.